There we go. I think everybody's back now. Hi. So good to see you guys. Welcome. Thank you all for jumping on here with me today. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I had told you guys that I was going to release a written explanation of the 5 clairs and developing your psychic intuition, but I didn't get around to writing it. So I figured it's a great way to start off October by talking about this and explaining all these things to you and ways you can heighten your own psychic gifts. I do believe that psychic abilities and gifts are for everyone. Everyone has them. And as I explain them to you, you'll probably be like, oh yeah, that's happened to me before. So even if you're like, oh, I don't have that, or, oh, I'm not gifted like that, I think that this conversation will probably change your mind. And you'll see that you definitely do have access to a lot of information. And you've definitely had experiences probably with all of these things before, but if not all of them, then at least some of them. So today I'm going to explain the 5 clairs to you, which are basically the 5 psychic senses. And I'm going to explain how you can work on tuning into them and exploring them and heightening them if that interests you. That said, welcome to October on 360. This is our first Zoom family chat this month. It's a little later than usual because I was stuck in the airport for like 3 days and that messed up the whole schedule. So thank you guys for being patient. We already had 1 live class this month with Lando. We had an issue with the recording of it. So he is filming a tutorial for us as well. So that will go live in a few days once we receive that. We have a live class with me this month as well on the 24th, I believe, of October. I am making that a public class this time as well. So if you have friends that want to try out a live class or just want to dance with me, it's for everyone, which means you'll all have access to it at every tier and it's public. So if you want to share it with friends or whatever, it's a great class to let people come try it out and be part of the fam. So I'll see you guys there as well. All right, so just let's jump right into it. I think that's everything about content for this month. And then you'll have another tutorial released as well, but I don't know exactly what I'll do for that one yet. I have to, if you guys have song requests, you can send them in. Okay, so that said, the 5 clairs. The first one is my favorite one, the one that I probably started having my psychic like gifts and intuition with is clairvoyance. Clairvoyance literally translates to clear seeing. So when you are clairvoyant, you kind of have visions, right? Things play on your 3rd eye. It's connected to your 3rd eye chakra, and you'll have visions. You might see flash of light. You might see a symbol. You might feel a little like a hallucination. I started having clairvoyant experiences when I was just about 3 or 4 years old. That's the first ones, at least, that have been reported to me, the first ones I probably could communicate. But my grandma passed away when I was about 4 years old, and we had a very close relationship, her and I. And multiple members of my family have said that at many different points, I would be like, she's sitting on the sofa, or I would wake up from sleep and I would see her sitting in a chair in the corner. So she was my first visions, my first clairvoyant visions. Often it could be something as simple as like seeing a light flash, or seeing a, you know, something out of the corner of your eye. If you've ever been like, oh, I thought I saw something, right? For me, most of my psychic gifts, I think clairvoyance and claircognizance, the next one I'm going to tell you about, are the 2 that I was like born with a major affinity for. So while I do believe everyone has ability to adapt all the psychic senses and probably will receive all of them as you open yourself up more, I do think we're all kind of born with different affinities and ones that are naturally stronger. And so for me, clairvoyance was the first one that I had, and now it's one that happens to me a lot. So if you guys remember in a previous Zoom, I told you while I was living in my house in Rome, outside Rome in Giuliano, I was sitting at breakfast and there was all this hubbub at the table. And I suddenly just got zoned into like a vision. And it just really quickly, I saw what looked like a scene of a funeral, like a lot of people standing around outside in what I could recognize as the square of the town we were living in. And I just looked up at everybody that's at the table, and I was like, someone's going to die in the village in the next like 3 days. Very horror movie-esque, very, ominous prediction, but I just knew what I had seen and I knew what it meant. And for some reason, I knew the timeline, which is where psychic gifts can kind of overlap, where I had a clairvoyant vision, but it was paired with a claircognizant understanding. And I'll explain that sense next. But lo and behold, exactly 3 days to the day that I had the vision, I was informed that a woman was killed and died in the village, and the village went into mourning and had funerals that looked identical to the one that I had seen that gave me the information in the first place. So when I was younger, I shied away a bit from this clairvoyance because I had a fear that I was creating these outcomes, that I was, seeing something and then somehow creating that experience, which after a lot of researching and coming to understand what these gifts are, obviously it's not my fault. I'm not creating them. I'm just accessing information that's available. So as you come deeper into understanding spirituality and energy and the way that it moves, you start to understand more about the quantum, and that time kind of doesn't really exist in the linear way that we think. Time is kind of past, present, and future, all just layered on top of each other. And so it's when you access future information, it's already available now. So I know that also becomes a bit confusing, because then it sounds like, okay, well, everything that's going to happen is already written, right? If you can access what's going to happen, then it must be already written in stone. So what's really the point of, living if everything we're going to do is already decided? But what I've come to find is that we end up with a most likely outcome based on the way that we're living right now. So I've come to understand this as well in learning and using the tarot. And basically what it does is tell you, based on what you're doing right now, the way you're thinking, the way you're moving, your habits, what you're doing with your day, this is the most likely outcome. But you, as having free will and being in the driver's seat, have the opportunity to change the course at any time. And when you do, you'll unlock and reframe different potentialities, because realistically, from your perspective, where you're existing, there's infinite potentialities and realities that you can create or have in your experience at any one time. And what you're unlocking and what you're creating is a direct reaction to what you're doing in this current moment, what you're doing here, and what you're doing outwardly on the planet. So yes, there is a most likely outcome, right? If you think of it like you're driving a car, if you keep the car going straight, there's a most likely outcome of where you're going to end up on the other side, right? But if you suddenly decide to turn the car right, then where you're going to end up is going to change and be altered. And that's very similar. So when we access future information, we access it with the understanding that it's likely, but it's not 100% certain, right? So I was talking a little bit about how I have clairvoyant visions, and that is like kind of like a quick moment where you'll see like a movie. It's like a quick scene or a quick, when I do channeling, now that I channel in my sessions with people I mentor or with people when I'm doing healings, I'll see like a picture or an image of, in my last, one of my last people I was channeling for, I saw like a specific place in San Diego. And I was like, I see the sea lions in La Jolla. And she was like, oh my God, that's my favorite place in the world. That's actually a trip that I went on recently. I'm thinking about moving there. So things like that are instances of clairvoyance. You just kind of see it happen. I told you that my vision also came with like just this understanding that what I was watching, this quick movie, was in a 3-day timeline. Now, there was nothing in the specific vision that would indicate 3 days, right? There wasn't a calendar, there wasn't a number, it wasn't anything like that. But when the vision was over, I just knew that the timeline was 3 days. That psychic gift is called claircognizance. That means clear knowing. So claircognizant visions are literally when you have a moment in your life where you're like, I just knew. I just knew that that was going to happen, or I just knew that that person and I were going to click, or I just knew that I was going to love that place. So it's something like a premonition, but without the visual aspect. So it's just any time in your life that you've been like, I just knew that. Right now, this main thing with my friends is that they take me to be some kind of a mind reader. I always know what everyone's thinking or what they're about to say, or, like today in my room, Danny's here laying here, as she always says, just so you know, I'm not talking about her on the sly or anything. But Danny was like standing next to my bed and she was like, do you remember that time? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, you do not know what I'm going to say. That's ridiculous. I didn't give you any more context. And so Ricky was like, let's do this. You come with me into the bathroom and you tell me what you were thinking of. And then we'll come out and we'll see if what she was going to say is what you were thinking of. So they go in the bathroom, they come out, lo and behold, I knew exactly what she was going to say. And I don't know why. She was like, get out of my head. Like, that's ridiculous. It's just, at least several times a day, like I have a clear knowing of either something that's going to happen, or, we were in Italy and Ricky was like, oh, we could go eat at this restaurant. And I was like, that restaurant's not open. And he was like, how the hell do you have that information? Like, that's ridiculous. You don't know that. I'm going to call. I was like, all right, go ahead, call. They're not open. Like, things like that just happen to me a lot. And that, I'm sure I would almost bet my life on the fact that you've probably had at least one instance in your life where you were like, I knew that. Like, I just knew that was going to happen. I knew that I was going to connect with this person, or I knew that that event was going to happen, or I just knew, anytime you've ever said that, you're tapping into claircognizance. The next one is Clairsentience. So Clairsentience means clear feeling. So Clairsentience is another one that I feel is more common. These three for me, I think, are probably the most common ones that people have probably accessed at some point, or maybe access pretty frequently. Clairsentience would be anytime you've ever gotten the chills, anytime you've ever walked into a room and had goosebumps, anytime you've ever had that little feeling on the back of your neck when you're like, ooh, something gave me the heebie-jeebies. Any of that, even a gut feeling, like when you meet someone and you're like, oh, I automatically don't like this person. It makes me feel weird or tense. All of those experiences would be considered clairsentience. So basically the clairs are having feelings where there is no physical reason for that feeling, right? Like where you just hear something and it gives you goosebumps and you're like, I don't know why that triggered this physical feeling reaction in me. So I think that it's probably likely that at some point in your life, you've had that feeling. Or like maybe if it could be negative and it could be positive, right? So if you've met someone and you really like them and you get butterflies, I love for people to explain like what butterflies are. Butterflies are clairsentience. It's your body reacting to a chemistry and to a connection with another human being. The next one I think is a little less common, but it is still one of the more common ones. It is clairaudience. Clairaudience is clear hearing. So this would be anything that you're hearing that doesn't have a physical explanation, right? So when you have a ringing in your ears, or when you hear voices, some people hear very clear voices. For me, this is one of the more rare ones, but at pivotal points in my life, I've had clairaudience, like very clearly heard a voice that wasn't there. So I mean, that's pretty much, I'm pretty sure you've had an experience where you've had like a ringing in your ear, or you've heard a sound and you were like, what was that? And there was like no real reason that you heard that. For me, one of the more recent ones was Danny got herself into a bit of a pickle at Universal Studios. We're not going to get into that old story because that's like a whole nother Zoom for a whole nother day. But Danny got herself into a little bit of a pickle. And it was quite the drama, and it was like pouring rain, and I was like dressed like Lara Croft, and it was like this whole thing, a whole scene. And I let Danny try to handle this by herself, but I like kind of knew that like she needed help, but I also had like a feeling like she really just had to do it by herself and I couldn't really get involved. So I feel like I always need to really honor that and not overstep my boundaries with anyone, with my friends, with my mentees. Like there's something about people needing to have their own experiences and live their own life. So I was like patiently just minding my business and waiting. And Danny was off trying to handle this on her own. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I heard very clearly like a voice say to me, a male voice say, go. And I knew instinctively it meant like go after Danny. And I like ran after Danny in this very dramatic, like wet rain movie montage through Universal, pushing people out of the way, like the whole nine. And like, long story short, I saved the day. But that was an example of Clairaudience. Danny's laughing, but like she knows she's a troublemaker. And Kendra's like just minding her business, but was also there for this event. Not great, not great. These are my witnesses, by the way. But yeah, so that was one of the times that I've had that happen. Clairaudience for me, like I said, is one of the ones that I experience more rarely. But it does happen to be one of the senses that if you are like auditory inclined, that people do have very, very strongly, right? So I'm more of a visual person. Like if I see something, I connect with it. I've always been more visual for whatever reason, which is why I guess I love visual arts, like dance. But a lot of people are very auditory. They love to play an instrument or do things like that, or just need to talk things out, need to hear things. And so you might have a more pronounced clairaudient ability if that is the way that you tend to live your life. The last one that is like primary is clairgustance, which is clear tasting. So this one again is more rare. And I do tend to find that clairgustance is something that is more of a mediumship ability. So mediumship is more where people channel the energy of people who've crossed over or people who have not yet crossed onto this plane again. So you're kind of interfacing with energies that aren't here in the physical realm. So when you are doing more mediumship, that's when you'll have a clairgustient experience. So clear tasting, it might be like, oh, you're maybe like, I have a weird taste in my mouth. And it tends to be like a spirit or someone who's departed trying to bring back a memory or bring you back to a period of time, something that is like a way of relaying a message. You'll have that experience. So like, for example, I've had people say that they've had like the taste of a cigar in their mouth if they had a parent that smoked cigars and that was something that they associated with them. Or even, a lot of times I notice people say that they have like a metallic taste in their mouth. They can taste like metal in their mouth. That would be considered clairgustance, although I don't know what that's communicating, just like ringing in your ears. I'm not sure exactly what energy that's communicating, but it is an example of tasting something that is not physically present. And so there's another one actually. So that's technically the 5 clairs that I consider the main ones, but there is also Sclera Sentience, which is clear smelling. So it is basically your psychic smell ability. So if you notice, you have the same psychic senses that you have physical senses, just claircognizance being the extra one, but it's, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching. And smelling. So clear smelling is just basically a smell that doesn't have a physical source. So again, I feel that this tends to be more of a mediumship ability when someone who's departed is trying to connect or to send a message or to revive a memory of some sort. Again, the same thing. Actually, I remember, my mom's in here, so she probably remembers, but we had neighbors that lived on the block that I grew up on, and they had the woman's husband had passed away and he was a big cigar smoker. And she used to say she would know he was in the house because they would smell cigars. And like, there was no reason for that. There was no cigar in the house. And then it could also be like a loved one's perfume or loved one's favorite flower. You'll just kind of smell something and be like, where did that come from? And like I said, in my experience, that tends to be connected more to mediumship, meaning someone who's departed, trying to connect or relay a message or just let you know that they're present. So that is the psychic senses and abilities. And well, first of all, does anyone have any questions about that? Because that's kind of like a lot of information, either questions or just maybe you want to relay your own experience of having a weird psychic intuitive situation. Selena, I see you have your hand up and you look really cozy in your blankie.
I'm so cold. It's so cold here. Hi, first. It's like I have something to share and a little question. First, it's about the second one, like the clear knowing. I don't know how you say it.
Claircognizant.
I can't remember. But like I have an example, like it happened to me today. After work, I had an appointment and I wasn't ready to go, but something told me like you have to go, and I did. And I knew that something good's gonna happen to me, and it did. I won some money that I wasn't supposed to win, and I knew it before. And I said, yeah, and God, I've been there, and I was so tired. I walked like 10 miles to go into this appointment, and I didn't want to go. But I felt something telling me you have to go, and I knew that something was gonna happen to me, and it was just so good. Like I was just smiling, and yeah, it was just so cool. And it's happening to me more and more like recently, and it's happening. Also, I have a little question about clairvoyance. Is that like this feeling of deja vu? You say?
What? Oh, like
you're having a scene and you feel like you have seen it before.
Yeah.
Like it's like you have a conversation with somebody and it's like you already had it, but it never happened. Is that similar, or?
That would be more like claircognizance, when you like, that's like a just know. Deja vu would kind of fall into there. Like, you know, a place that you haven't been to before, or you like feel that you've already experienced something. That could be more of a claircognizant experience. Clairvoyance is like you physically saw it, right? Like, so again, I think I told you this story as well. When we were in Florence, we were sitting in Florence, and while we were sitting at dinner, I had a vision of a room, and I saw like a living room with white couches everywhere. And I just said to everyone, I had a vision of a living room and all the couches are white and they're kind of set up this way. And I explained the room that I saw. And then everyone was like, that's not my house. That's not my room. I don't know what that is. I didn't recognize the place. And then like 40 minutes later, Jenna comes back to the table and she's like, we're going to have to stay overnight this evening. And I was like, okay, let's book a hotel. So I just randomly booked a hotel without obviously doing anything, the way I do everything. And when we got to the hotel, we walked into the lobby, and it was the exact room that I had described in the vision that I had had an hour or so before. So that would be an example of clairvoyance. It's like you literally saw something and then you saw it again. So deja vu, unless you had like a vision of a place, wouldn't necessarily be clairvoyance. It would be closer to claircognizance though. Like you just know a place, even though you've never been there.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. This is a good question. Kenny has a question live here in the studio. Yes, Kendra.
I have a question. Okay, so my question is, like, with all of this, is it always have to be something where you're wide awake?
No,
and
absolutely
I
not.
Ask that because I am a big dreamer. So I have a lot of dreams, and the dreams that I have, like a lot of times, like almost every time, always come to pass.
Well, Kendra better segue me into the next segment. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about activating your psychic abilities, and I'll get into what Kendra just asked. You absolutely do not need to be wide awake in order to access your psychic abilities. Actually, for most people, they're easier to access once you turn off your left brain, and you're either in left brain being your logical brain, you're either in some kind of meditative trance-like state or sleep. So we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, so how do you activate these abilities if you want to access them more? The first step is really to clear, right? We need to make sure we don't have energy blockages, especially because your senses tend to your psychic senses tend to correspond to chakras in your body. And those chakras having blockages would block psychic senses. So like, for example, clairvoyance is connected to the third eye, claircognizance to the crown. So carrying energy blockages in those chakras creates a block to access the psychic information. So you can clear your chakras many ways. You can do a sound bath, you can do energy healing like Reiki or any other kind of energy healing. You can also eat healthier. People really forget the fact that there are your body just works like a system. So if everything is flowing clean through the system, then everything is more powerful, right? So healthy eating really does help to release blockages, energetic and physical ones, right? Because they're connected to each other. You can't have a physical block in your stomach, for example, and then also have a clear system. It doesn't really work like that. So eating healthy is actually really tied to opening up and unblocking chakras. And there's even specific foods that help to activate and unblock specific chakras. Healing stones, meditation, or like mantra chants, if you get into Kundalini, all of those are really great ways to unblock chakras. And you can do a quick Google search and it'll tell you, if say you want to clear your root chakra, it'll tell you specifically what foods to eat, what herbs to use, what stones correlate with it, what mantra works with it, how to clear that specific chakra. So I'll give you guys a quick rundown of like, if you're trying to diagnose, well, which of my chakras might be blocked. They could be all of them. They could all be blocked. That's not weird or problematic. But in general, this is what the blockages look and feel like. If you have a root chakra blockage, that's the one at the base. So we're going to talk from the base of your spine, traveling up through your chakra center. So root being your first chakra. If you had a blockage, it could feel like fear. It could feel like trauma-based responses, and it could be disordered eating patterns that could be a result of root chakra blockages. Sacral chakras blockages look like emotional instability, addiction, severe fear of change, also connected to sacral chakra blockages. Solar plexus blockages can lead to bullying, lack of self-worth, mental, emotional, and physical, any kind of abuse on your system usually can sit here in the solar plexus chakra. So physical, sexual, emotional, mental, spiritual abuse all sits here. Sexual abuse also can sit in the sacral chakra as well, but it also sits in the solar plexus. Heart chakra, you might feel stress, you might have difficulty expressing emotion, you might have a lot of overthinking. That tends to be a symptom of heart chakra blockages. Throat chakra blockages tend to be characterized by an inability to speak your mind, or just low self-esteem or fear of self-expression, speaking who you are, or speaking your truth. Third eye chakra blockages look like having a closed mind, not wanting to hear any other perspectives, or just having like blind obedience, people who just do what they're told without questioning anything. That could be indicative of a third eye blockage. And crown chakra blockages look like an overactive ego, an overbearing sense of like negative feeling, negative belief, like everything's going to go wrong, like deep pessimism, and just a lack of meaningful relationships. Somebody who has a lot of trouble creating meaningful friendships or romantic partnerships can be a symptom of a crown chakra blockage. So that might help you identify which of your chakras might be blocked. If you were listening to that, being like, oh yeah, that's me. I have worry like that. I have fear like that. I don't like change. It might be all of those things. Like I said, that's okay, right? Like I said, it kind of works like a system. So if you have a blockage someplace, it kind of creates clogs everywhere, which is not a problem, right? There's lots of ways to move it. So once you identify where you have a blockage and you work through clearing your chakras, you can then sit in meditations to activate specific gifts or chakras. So for me, when I do this, I'm going to talk you through the process of how I activate chakras in my own personal meditations. And before I begin an activation meditation, I'll clearly state what I'm trying to do, right? So if I, for example, want to connect more to my intuitive, either third eye or crown, claircognizant or clairvoyant experiences, I'll say something like, I'm connected to my intuitive ability. I just know, and I'm accessing this ability in order to gain information for the betterment of myself and for others. I trust my intuition. My intuition is coming from a divine higher source that is guiding me, right? And in these cases, if you do have a religion or a God that you pray to, it's a similar thing, right? You could easily be speaking that to God, right? I trust in God to guide me. I trust in Buddha, Allah, whoever you love, pray to, and trust. It's the same thing, right? I'm using higher power or divine source just to kind of keep it open. Then especially if I'm trying to envision a specific chakra, I'll start there, right? So say I want to access more clairvoyance. I want to see something. I'll literally picture this chakra in my head. After a few minutes of quiet meditation, I'll just get calm and get centered, seated upright. I do activation meditation sitting up. I do like to meditate laying down when I'm just clearing, but for activation, I tend to feel better sitting up, pulling up in my back, making sure my root is settled into the ground, because especially if you can do this on some kind of natural ground like grass, then you're really cooking with gas, because it's like, a connection to sacred energy from the earth. So I'll picture that chakra kind of glowing, and I'll picture it getting bigger and pulsing and vibrating and coming online, right? So I'll just visualize that in whatever chakra I'm trying to activate or whatever sense I'm trying to activate. And sometimes I'll do it for all the chakras. So I'll start at the root and I'll imagine that chakra glowing. And with this, you can also get deeper and learn the colors of the chakras. Like, for example, your heart chakra is associated with the color green. So when I imagine my heart chakra, I see it like a glowing green orb. But I'll start at the bottom with the root, and I'll go from chakra to chakra and kind of picture them like lighting up and lighting each other up and creating this system where everything is light and glowing. And yeah, so I then will sit there and I'll sit in that, and I'll trust that these chakras are opening, that they're answering the initial ask of what I am connecting to or what I am achieving, right? I'm activating my sacred energy source. I am activating my psychic abilities. I'm activating my clear knowing. I want to just know. I'm activating my intuition, whatever it is you're trying to do, right? Or I am, in some cases, you might want to be connecting, right? I'm connecting with my ancestors. I'm connecting with maybe a specific person, right? A specific guide. And kind of just keeping that intention in your body, and then going through this activation meditation. And then after you do the whole activation visualization, you can really just spend a couple more minutes in a quiet meditation and then move out into the world. And step number 3 is really the critical one. Now you've cleared your chakras. Now you've activated your chakras through meditation. It's really important that you trust your downloads, right? This is actually, to me, the most major key for receiving more information, right? So I always say, universe, God, whatever you believe this energy is that we're all talking about and communicating with, is very much like a loving parent. If they're giving you information that you're not using, they're not going to just give you more, right? They want to see you honoring, acknowledging, and leaning into information that you're already being given, and then they'll unlock more information for you. So, I saw a meme the other day that was like, even when I get a sign, I like to wait around for like a signier sign. And I know a lot of people do that. They'll be like, oh, I knew that was going to go wrong, but I just wanted to see if that was going to really go wrong. And then when it did go wrong, I was like, maybe I'm wrong about it being wrong. And, it's a lot of like really doubting yourself and doubting your feelings about a person, place, experience. And when you do that, you inhibit your own ability to advance these gifts. So it's really important that you tune in and use what you're given. So that being said, even if you do all these things and you're still having trouble accessing psychic information in your waking state, one of the most powerful ways to access psychic information is in dreams. To me, most of my psychic information comes through while I'm asleep, or at least it used to before I like did boatloads of work. I had mostly dreams that gave me pieces of information. For example, the mission to sell all my things and move abroad and live on the road came to me in a dream. I was told in a dream to leave. I was shown like a lot of water and tsunami. I don't remember if you guys remember that, but I would see California being covered over in water and basically going under. And I kind of feel like that's happening to California minus the water. So I got the information that I needed to leave there, that I needed to seek out another place to be. And following that intuition has, led me on the greatest path of my life. I can't even say enough good things. Someday I'll probably have to write a book about the serendipity of this journey that I'm on and the way that it's working for me in order to even vocalize it to you. But accessing psychic information in dreams is massively useful. So the way I suggest you start this is by asking a specific question and then stating aloud that you will have the answer revealed to you tonight in a dream, right? So be as specific as you like. You need to buy your mom a birthday card, a birthday gift, and you don't know what to get her. Be like, I'm going to decide today the best possible gift for my mom's birthday. And then go to bed with that intention. Yeah. One of the best examples of a dream intuition is the scientist James Watson. He was working around the clock trying to understand the physical structure of DNA and asking over and over, how is this structured, right? Is the chemical, the building block of life? Like, what does this look like? And so one day before bed, he asked that question. And in his dream, he was shown two snakes intertwining. And when he woke up, he understood DNA to be a double helix. And that is where the discovery that DNA is a double helix came from, this scientist's dream. It was actually never verified in a laboratory experiment. So it's more common than you think. It's more sciencey than you think. It's more prevalent than you think. And it's really for the same reasons I was saying before. When you quiet your left brain, that is your busy logical brain, you access a lot of subconscious information that you already have access to. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Limitless, but that touches on a real concept that you've already come into contact with so much information. You've probably heard enough of a foreign language to know it. You just don't know how to categorize and access that information. And it's kind of crazy. As I've been doing this more and more, we've been joking that like, I have so much information and knowledge that I like really shouldn't have. Like the other day I was walking down the street when we got to Ireland with Ricky, and this random bird comes and like flies into the street. And Ricky, I was like, look at that bird. And Ricky's like, yeah, it's a really cute bird. I'm like, yeah, it's a magpie. He's like, what? And I was like, I don't know. I just think that's what that bird is called. And he's like, I don't know jack shit about birds, y'all, like at all. Like that's where my knowledge really ends. But lo and behold, I Google it and that's the name of this damn bird. And I'm like, how do I know that? Like, why do I have that information? And I do believe that that is how we, first of all, you have a lot of information subconsciously. Either maybe somebody did say that to me at some point in my life, but in my conscious memory, I could never remember it. Or maybe there really is a true collective consciousness, which I deeply believe in. And that collective consciousness is allowing us to access the thoughts, memories, information, dreams of people existing on this planet now and people who have passed. Like basically all of the knowledge of humanity existing in this cloud, right? Like kind of like the Apple cloud, except maybe not as ominous or confusing. You just have access to this database of information. And if you're clear enough, you can pull on it, right? Even just in other ways, like I'll be cooking and I don't even know what I'm doing. I just I'm going to make a soup and I have literally no idea what's happening, but I just start throwing things together and I've made something. Right. And then when we were in Italy, at some point I picked up the phone and just started speaking fluent Italian. And I think we even have it on tape, but as soon as I hung up the phone, Danny was like, what? She was like, I've never heard any of those words before. That was fluent Italian. I had a full 5-minute fluent Italian conversation. And I don't know what happened. Something clicked and I spoke fluent Italian and I'd heard enough of it and something happened and I just spoke it perfectly. And that's happening to me more and more. Even being here in Ireland, driving on the other side of the road, on the other side of the car, I was like, oh, it's going to take a minute to get used to. But I just got in the driver's seat and was like, oh, there's literally nothing to get used to. I feel like I've done this before. I know how to do this. And it was just not even an issue. It didn't even take 1 minute. As soon as I sat in the driver's seat, I was like, oh, back home in Ireland. By the way, I'm in Ireland. I don't know if I told you guys what was going on. I feel like you probably put that together, but I moved. Yeah. So that's the most of the information that I wanted to convey to you today, that I wanted you to have available to you today, that I want you to start to tap into and think about in your own life. It's a really good time to journal about and think about, where have these gifts made themselves known to you before? And where can you lean in and use them, right? If you have access to more information than what is just physically available, then you should use it, right? It would make us far more powerful, right? And I think it's funny because from when we were younger, we've been taught you don't really want to learn the hard way. And there's no easier way than knowing how something's going to turn out before it happens, and listening and honoring your GPS, right? Your internal guidance system that's telling you, hey, I see some comments here. Oh, they have meanings. Katie said the magpies in Dublin have meanings. If you see one, it's sad. If you see two, it's lucky. Irish people have a lot of superstitions. You guys have all kinds of things. You shouldn't start a journey on a Wednesday and you shouldn't do this. And one of these means that. And you've got all kinds of, I need to learn what those things are because I don't want to be out of line.
Pickles.
Yeah, and he did. Kendra said you don't like pickles. Today we went to the deli and Kendra asked for pickles and the lady was like, we don't like pickles in Ireland. Kendra was like, okay, my bad. Repeating number patterns. This is a great question. Brianna's saying for the past few months, she's been seeing repeating numbers, 111, 222. You can also see numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Each of them does mean something specific, and you can easily just Google search what each thing means. Some mean alignment, some mean presence of your angels or your guides, some mean you're supported to move forward, some mean whatever, you're right on time. What does this mean? So for me, again, we've talked about this many times before. We ask for communication from spirit or from God or from whatever you think, right? We ask for that. We say, guide me, tell me what I need to know. Tell me what I need to see. Show me what I need to see, right? And then I don't know how we're expecting to be communicated with, but to me, it just makes sense that if we are living in a universe that is numerical, it is a coded numerical universe that we live in, then why wouldn't spirit or God be able to use numbers to communicate with you, right? That is a fundamental aspect of our humanity is numbers, right? So I feel that's how they would reach out to you, through a sign, right? And those signs tend to come as something that means something to you. So for example, I always say that orange butterflies are my grandmother coming to contact me. And I don't know why I felt this way originally, but over time, it came to be that I would say her name for some reason. I would tell someone about her. And within a few minutes, I would see an orange butterfly. So I was trying to explain to Ricky, he was like, why do you think that orange butterflies are her? And what makes you make that connection? And I was like, every time I either need guidance, ask for guidance, or mention her, invoke her, ask for her guidance, or just say hi, right? Or say, I want to see you. Within an hour or two, an orange butterfly appears to me. Not just any butterfly, it's always orange. And honestly, just the other day when we moved into this house, there was an orange butterfly in the house sitting on the windowsill. And I went over and she sat in my hand, and then she flew out the front door. And that's really bizarre to me. Like, you could say that's a coincidence, but that's really bizarre coincidence. And so when I was explaining this to Ricky, he was asking me when we were in Venice, what makes you think orange butterflies are her? All of a sudden I was talking about her and explaining her. An orange butterfly flew out of nowhere and like was in my hand, like sitting with me while I was telling him the story about my grandmother, whose name is Rita. And so we went on throughout the day, and I felt that sign from her very heavy. And like a couple of hours later, we were about to walk back to our hotel room, and we passed this wall that has like a million flyers on it, all different pieces of paper, all just strung up. And I zone in on a purple piece of paper, and I just want to go see it. And he's pulling me. He's like, no, come on, we got to get back to the room. And I'm like, no, we have to stop. I have to see this piece of paper. And he stops. And so I walk over to the paper, and the paper says, like, if you want to know your future, if you want to know that you're protected, call Rita, my grandmother name on the flyer. And so I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he was like, that's crazy. Like, no way. And it was a woman who was giving like readings. And I was like, my mind was like forever. And like, we were so tired, and we were just trying to get home. And like, for some reason, this purple piece of paper catches my eye, and I'm like so compelled that I had to go see it. And like I said, in the past, if I wasn't as tuned in, I would have probably just gone and been like, yeah, you're right. Let's just go. It's not a big deal. It's just a piece of paper. But by listening to that call and going and like zoning in on it, I got confirmation, and I received the message. I actually ended up messaging the woman and asking her to do a reading for me. And so we are setting up a reading for this week. So I'll let you know how that goes. But of all the names, of all the experiences, within a 3-hour time split for me to have a message and then see her name on the paper with a clear sign that was like, if you want to know your future, if you want to know you're protected, if you want to know about your life, call Rita. And that's what I do. Like, I call on her when I have questions. So it was like as divine as possible. So numbers, it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing in a different outfit. Instead of an orange butterfly, it might be a number. It might be someone's birthday that you see. It might be just repeating numbers. Universe is letting you know you're tuned into us, and we're tuned into you. We're capturing your attention, right? Because if you think about it, there's so much stimulus and so much stimuli happening around you all the time. For something to catch your attention, it's must be meaningful, right? Because you're scanning past so much stuff all the time. So if you happen to zone in the clock, and on that exact moment you're in alignment with something, then there must be a message being conveyed to you. What I find with numbers is that it's generally the universe's way of being like, you're here, we're here, we got you. Like, we're on the level. Like, it's the way of being like, you're paying attention, we're letting you know that we acknowledge that attention. So I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't had that many experiences where numbers have meant something specific, but it has always meant something. So in the example where I was telling you guys, I had a vision in Florence of the hotel room we were about to stay at. When we got that bill at that restaurant, the bill came back for $111. When we got to the hotel room, I got checked into room 111. So there was clear numerical alignment showing me that the place that you had the vision was connected to this hotel, right? In more ways than one. And the code to get into and out of the hotel was my grandfather's birthday. And so people can say that that stuff is coincidental, but for me, it's way too aligned to be coincidental. I could have been at any hotel in the whole city. I could have landed anywhere. I could have been put in one of any number of 250 guest rooms. I could have paid any amount of money for dinner. So to me, we're way past coincidence, and we're really moving into signs and alignment. This is a good question. Do you believe if you ignore certain guides or source messages or signs from God, they'll no longer continue to come, or that door will be closed for you? So what I have found is that when you have a very important message, God will be relentless in delivering it to you. They'll start in more esoteric ways. You might have a dream that's a little bit like, oh, say you have a dream of yourself like on the treadmill and you're running too fast, you can't keep up. That dream might symbolize you're moving too fast in your everyday life. If you just wake up from that dream and dismiss it, eventually you're going to get another more clear message, often in the sign of an illness. You're going to start to get run down, right? So I do tend to find that if it's a really important message, something that you need, something that will protect you, source, God, divinity, the divine power, they do try to contact you over and over and keep reaching out, right? And it's often why we do get beat over the head with the same information, right? You meet someone and you have that gut feeling that they're not great, but you pursue a relationship anyway, and you're just kind of like beat over the head with this knowing that you had from the beginning until you're eventually released from this person's experience. So what I find is the really important things, they will relay over and over. And I don't think that they ever like give up on you. I think they always come back and they always try again. And they always have hope for you to tune into the things you really need to know. But as far as additional information, right? Like, did I need to know what the exact inside of the hotel room I was staying in looked like? Probably not. Would I have access to things like that if I was close to source messages? Probably not. So that's where I tend to find that people who are intuitive or channel or mediums, not only for themselves, but for others, in order to access abilities on that level, it does require openness to receiving and utilizing the messages. But like I said, in terms of overarching messages from God about your specific life, they'll come again and again, like a patient parent will just keep delivering the message to you. But I do think it's so cool that if you have this connection, you might as well start to open it up and use it for the greater good, because you can not only impact and influence yourself to move in paths of least resistance or move closer to your highest and most aligned path, you start to be able to do it for others. I can sit in a meditation with someone and channel information for them that I don't know, right? And it happens all the time. I know about experiences of theirs, and in one of my most recent meetings, I was able to see someone's office, exactly where she worked, and receive information about what she should do with her career. So it tends to be just a really cool thing. If you want to tune into it, then tune all the way in. Does it ever get overwhelming to be so connected? That's a really good question. The answer to that, I would say, is no. Actually, it feels much safer and much calmer, because the understanding I have now makes a lot more sense than the understanding that I was programmed into. When people tried to teach me that nothing mattered and nothing was connected and nothing made sense, and all you had was you work hard, you get this, and that's the outcome. And it's very linear and closed. And, it just was like very like, take one step and then this is this and this is this, this is it. It felt very chaotic and confusing. And when I looked around and I saw people not taking those specific steps or going in that way and like looked like they were jumping all over the map, I was always trying to like kill myself understanding like, why are certain people not playing in these rules that you're telling me I have to play in? And why do I have feelings and information? When I was younger, I would meet someone and not like them off the bat. And people would be like, oh, that's judgmental. And you can't just decide you don't like someone off the bat. And yes, you can. You can absolutely meet someone and not necessarily not like them, but you can absolutely know immediately from a cursory interaction that someone just doesn't energetically vibrate with you and isn't necessary for your immediate experience. You can absolutely have access to that information. So I spent a lot of time overwhelmed being like, why do I have these feelings? And why do I see things and hear things and know things? But people are telling me, oh, there's no way you can know that. Like, that's just you being judgmental, or that's just you, being crazy or whatever it is. And that to me was overwhelming. That's what I think triggered my anxiety disorder because I had so much anxiety about things I just knew or things I just felt that everyone was telling me, like, you can't just know that. Well, yes, you can. You absolutely can. So I feel much safer now. I feel a lot more, there's a lot more sense, and I feel a lot more protected now. Like, I really do feel like I have a team of people helping to guide me and to lead me and that want to see me safe and successful. And I feel much less alone. And I don't know, it does tune me into the understanding that there is a force bigger than us and higher than us that is teaching us that we are all connected and that we are all necessary for each other, and we are all affecting each other and our environment, our circumstance. And I think that thought alone is enough for me to feel a lot more meaning and purpose in life and in every interaction, right? I think it became easy to have interactions with people that we thought were like, oh, whatever, that's just a taxi driver, I'm never going to see them again. If you really do think that things aren't connected and they're not heavy and they're not weighted, then yeah, just a passing experience, just a flyer on the wall, just a butterfly, it doesn't matter. But I feel like when you live your life that way, it feels pointless a little bit. It's kind of like, all right, well, I'll just learn this thing and work this job and get this money and someday die. And that's kind of it, right? But this understanding and this information and the way that it confirms for me that there are forces at work that are much larger than what we can see. And there is a purpose and there is a connection for everyone. Like, this connection and this experience is happening for every person on the planet, whether they're choosing to wake up to it or not. That means that what we're dealing with is a major force and that none of this really is accidental. And that alone makes me excited to try to uncover more and experience more. And so, yeah, I don't really feel overwhelmed because I feel very connected to people. I feel that everyone on this planet is like my family, is my brothers and sisters that I'm experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and getting the privilege to interact with them and to know something about them and to hear something about them. And that makes life a lot more loving and connected and purposeful for me personally. But at the beginning, it was overwhelming, but I think it was more so because I was trying to reject this thought process and I was trying to push these things aside and be like, there's no way, like, that doesn't make sense. And now that I've accepted it and I use it, I never feel overwhelmed by it. I just feel like it's really cool and I feel excited by it and I just want to do more of it. And I want to like tune in more and learn more from people that are doing it. So yeah, for me, not more overwhelming, much less. Does anyone have a last question for me? Or anything they want to add?
I have 2 questions, if that's cool.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I guess a follow-up on like the overwhelming question, and I think it was Brianna's question earlier about like repeating number patterns. I mean, like, I see it all the time. And you were saying like some of them have specific meanings, which I've looked up as well. But at its core, it's just kind of being like, hey, I see you, you see me, I see you seeing me. But if you're consistently seeing like, I don't know, I feel like one of those things, and maybe that's why I asked the overwhelming thing, is like I see it so consistently and I'm always like, this is so cool. And I always tell people about angel numbers and I'm like, hey, it's 444. Like, I'll randomly catch it and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, yeah, no, but like, this is the 3rd time I've seen it today. Like, it's ridiculous. But I don't know what to do with that or like where to go next. So I guess I'm like, that's why it can feel, I don't know if it's overwhelming so much as like, this is just a lot of stimulus that I'm actively acknowledging and receiving. And I'm like, okay, and what about it? Like, what am I supposed to do?
I think that's a really good question. And I think for me personally, I like I said, I don't know like the overall answers to this. So I do think that there's a couple of things that could be at play. One, you might be asking for confirmation of something, right? You might be in your affect asking for confirmation, either that you're on the right track or that you're doing a good job, or you might just be looking for like a pat on the back or a hug or attention of some sort. And so you might just be getting it as that, right? A literal hug from spirit as a confirmation that you're on the right track. You're okay. Like basically universe being like, you're doing good, honey. Like keep it moving. Like whatever you're doing is working. So keep doing it because it's working. Right. It's definitely not something that I find comes as like a major like warning, right? So what you said about it, it really is that. It's not necessarily telling you to do anything other than that, other than just saying, we're here, you're on the level, this is working, right? So like I said, it could be in response to something that you are asking for without realizing you're asking for it, right? So for example, if you're saying like, I don't feel supported, or I feel really lonely, or I'm whatever it is, right? I'm not sure that this is the right path. You might be getting an answer to that question in the form of these repeating numbers that are saying, you are supported, you are seen, you are not alone, like we are listening, you have people on your side. So it could be that a message communicated. And when that happens, I usually will say something like message received or right on time, right? And so I think that's an intuitive understanding for you. When you see one message, it might be right after you said, ugh, I feel so like drained. I feel like I don't have like anything working for me right now. You might see a number, and that number is saying, we're working for you. We're right here. Don't forget, there's still the support. And that's a good time to be like, okay, message received, right? Or you might see numbers while you're really cooking, right? Something's going really well and you just happen to see it. That's probably a sign. Let's go. Let's keep doing what we're doing. We see the work, like we're supporting it. And that's a good time to say like, right on time, like you're right on time, right? Like when I was driving in the car and Ricky was taking that video of me saying like, how does it feel to be superhuman? Like you can just like do anything. And I was like, it feels like I've tapped into the collective conscious. And as I was saying that, like the number was 444. So for me, that was universe being like, yes, absolutely. Like that's their affirmation of either what you're saying, what you're thinking, or what you're doing is on time. It's accurate. It's received properly. So I do think there's like an intuitive capacity to that. And I don't necessarily think that they're trying to get you to do anything other than what you're already doing, right? If you were off track, then you wouldn't see the numbers. So then you would maybe be like, maybe I'm out of alignment because universe likes to communicate with me personally in numbers and I'm not seeing them. So maybe I'm not on time. Maybe I better start moving stuff around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a way that I haven't thought about it before. So it's like, I think that's the kind of shift from overwhelming to calming, where I'm like, I'm seeing all the stimulus and I'm like, okay, I see you, I acknowledge you, but like, now what? But I think reshifting the mindset, it makes it more like soothing, where it's like, okay, I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm like, all of those things.
Yeah.
My second question.
Yeah.
My second question was about like relationships and spirituality, or like whatever we want to label it, right? But thinking about like in most religions in the Bible, it'll say like you want to find a partner that's equally yoked, and they're specifically talking about religion. But obviously this isn't religion so much as just like, but it navigates kind of your being, right? The way that you navigate the world. And so to what extent do you think like that's important in navigating the dating space or in finding partners, to find someone who's like, for lack of better words, like equally yoked when it comes to kind of reception to, you know, like your psychic abilities and things like that?
Well, that's a really good question. I would say that you don't necessarily need to find a partner that's in the exact same spiritual experience as you. Like, I just think that if you are in a spiritual experience, you would need someone that was at least receptive and open to hearing about and understanding that experience. Because me speaking about my psychic abilities, that's an aspect of me, just like my hair is brown, just like, you know, I like certain things and dislike certain things, just like I live nomadically. It's just a truth of who I am. So at this point, it'd be impossible for you to either be my friend or date me and not have an openness or curiosity about that, because it would mean you were cutting off a full aspect or a quality of who I am, right? And I think that's true about religion too, right? If you're deeply invested in your religion, it'd be quite difficult to have an experience that was fully connected with a partner that was closed off to that understanding or to that experience as well. So I don't necessarily think that both people need to be on the same plane in terms of where they're at, right, with their spiritual abilities and stuff. For example, like with me and Ricky, he is newer in his, especially expansion of his understanding of how to access psychic ability and his intuition, but it's something he's like deeply interested in. And it's something I like work with him a lot on. And I believe he has mediumship abilities that he started exhibiting when he was a child, but that's something he's just kind of touching and like getting interested in and learning about now. And I'm very far in the development of my psychic abilities. So like the fact that we're not in the same place on it doesn't create a problem, because he's so open and interested and aware, right? Even if he doesn't ever like dive in the deep end, at least he's interested and receptive, and he sees mine at work and he acknowledges them. So to me, that's the reason that you need that alignment, because otherwise it would be somebody literally ignoring an entire aspect of me. And then at that point, we're gonna be missed in the connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It was really interesting. I went to and monopolize space. I know other people have questions. I went to an apothecary with my friend who like practices Reiki and is very like deep and developed in his spiritual journey. There's two apothecaries literally right next to each other, one that just opened and one that's been there. To the one that's been there because he's been there a while, and then we're walking by, and downstairs is like the other one, and I was like, hey, here, like literally right here, do you want to go in? He's like, nah, it's okay. And I was like, come on, it's 4 steps away, let's walk down. And we walk in, and it's like and he's Black, and so it was like a Black woman healer. It was the first like Black woman in kind of the spirituality journey that he's like intimately met. And he like got super excited, and she was like, I know your name. And they like bonded for a whole hour on it. And she was like, y'all know you're special. And it was just this thing. And I was like, this is what alignment feels like. I was like, this is a lot. He like started crying. Like, yeah, friend. I was like, I told you we needed to come in here. And it just feels like that happened last week. You're hosting this week, where I'm just like, I think I'm becoming more just like open to like, okay, I hear y'all. Now what? Like, I feel like I'm being pushed to like, I don't want to say embark, because I feel like I've already embarked, but so take a more like prominent in my own journey.
Absolutely. I think that's, again, right on time. And it's probably a good reason that you're seeing so many repeating number patterns. I do find Ricky actually sees a lot of repeating numbers all of a sudden. And I do find that they tend to be when you are coming earlier into your spirituality journey, they'll start being like, all right, let's go. We're right on time. That door is opening. You know, I think they notice when they see us start to shift, where it's like they have a window of opportunity and they start being like, throw in the floodgates, like everything we got, numbers, colors. Somebody asked me if colors could also be psychic connection. Absolutely. Anything that's meaningful to you, anything that you see and you're like, that means something to me, it's time to start exploring what that is, you know. And it's funny because with Ricky as well, I'm very tuned into my environment, and he's, like I said, a bit newer on his spiritual path. But in my whole experience, I've not ever seen feathers. Like, that's not something that I receive. I don't receive messages that way. I don't see them. But like after like a week or so of Ricky being here, I started seeing feathers everywhere. Like they're literally everywhere. There are places they just shouldn't even be. And so I said to him after a while, these are for you, because this has nothing to do with me. I didn't start seeing feathers till you got here. And so we've over time started to realize like it's the way that his father is communicating. And like when we talk about his dad, we'll start to see feathers more. And it's like signs for him. And it's funny because we started to joke, like when I see a butterfly, it'll be like one orange butterfly floats through and I'm like, oh, look, there she is. I'll say hi to her. And we move on. But with Ricky, like at points, he would be sitting and like there would be like 10,000 feathers like around his chair at lunch. And we were like, they're really like having to work overtime because you're new. And they're like, he's going to see these feathers and he's going to know that this is not a coincidence, that these are his feathers, because he's not like getting it. So I was like, your whole life.
How does she know that she's just not seeing feathers, like a new sign? Well, maybe because it was no connection.
Whoa, somebody unlocked themselves. Well, there we go. That scared me. I was like, oh my God, we're being communicated with. But yeah, so I was just like, these feathers are definitely for you, and they're coming out in major in major ways for you. And I'm like, these people have probably been leaving you feathers your whole life, and you have been ignoring feathers your whole life. And now they're like a small window of opportunity with someone that helped you notice it. And they're going to literally just throw feathers at your face for the rest of the day until you're like, okay, I get it. So I do feel like, yeah, that you will have a barrage of things as you do start to like initially open, because they are like, we've got a window. Let's send it over the edge. I hate this. this Wi-Fi. Or this Wi-Fi. Look at everyone's cute little smiling faces though. Does anyone else have any questions or any like things that they want to throw in there? Because you guys have been amazing today. I don't want to cut you off. You all have so many great insights. You can throw in anything you like. Or if you have questions or like doubts, right? Like, where does it stop? Where does it become a spiritual experience and stop being a coincidence, right? At first, that was like Ricky's big, it's big resistance. You're like, that's just a coincidence. And then eventually even he had to be like, all right, well, I think we're too far past like the realm of coincidence at this point. It's too many, it's too much. And I always say like coincidence ends where your doubt ends. Once you start to believe that everything is purposeful and everything is happening for a reason, then it is, you know, your life really is dictated by your mindset. So it is your decision. If you want to see it as purpose, if you want to see it as alignment, if you want to see it as communication, then it is, right? Just like if you want to see it as meaningless, it could be. But I will say that over the course of doing this and being on the spiritual journey, people struggle a lot more to make it meaningless than to make it meaningful, right? It's much harder to see all these things and chalk them up to nothing. It doesn't mean anything, right? We really, I think, struggle there more. And we come to points of anxiety and depression when we are trying to make things meaningless, right? When we're trying to make things just temporal and just physical, that tends to lead us into dark places, where once we start seeing meaning and understanding energy and using it and rejoicing in it, we find peace and we find purpose, and we start releasing ego traps and things that were holding us hostage before, right? The need to look a certain way or wear a certain clothing or live in a certain place or do a certain job. All that stuff really kind of releases its hold on you and you become a lot freer. And so for me, that became the impetus for me searching for meaning in life, because that led me to lighter and higher places than trying to make it all just the linear, meaningless experience that I think we're programmed to see it as. I see that. I see you guys saying messages now, saying, Brianna saying that she used to freak about the numbers, but now you feel your angels are guiding you. I love that. They are. Julie's saying, I know my biggest problem is that I struggle to listen to the signs I receive to move in the direction of my dreams because I'm still struggling with fear and with the judgment of others. Understandable. And Katie's saying, I have signs like numbers or butterflies led you on to what to do next or how to move next. Do you consider them when making a decision? I know you mentioned dreams. Yes. I have had other signs aside from just like dreams and stuff. Actually, there's been times where I've been in a foreign city that I didn't know, and I would follow a butterfly down a specific alley or down a specific place and be led to like a store or a restaurant that I needed to be at, or a location that I needed to see. Numbers as well. I've been in places where like I felt like I should wait or I should go right now. And in doing that and aligning with like numbers on the clock or numbers anywhere else, right? One of the numbers that follows me, for example, is the number 33. I find myself like very guided by that number, and it tends to show up in places that, you know, when I need confirmation of something. So there's certain numbers that I see that are not necessarily just repeating numbers. They're just like my numbers. Number 7 follows me a lot. 33 follows me a lot. And they just become like numbers that mean something to me. So yes, I do I'll see something and I'll pick that and it'll lead me someplace, right? Or it'll put me in a place that I need to be, or I'll get someplace and that'll be the address. And it's just like my nod that like, okay, you've chosen well, like you've put yourself in alignment with something that universe puts in your hands. So number 7. Yeah. 7 is a big spiritual number. It's a lot of people do tend to tune into and resonate with the number 7. But thank you guys so much. This was an amazing chat. I'm really, really glad that you guys tuned in with me today. I hope that you learned something, that you got something from this. I hope that you will think about the gifts that you have and tune into them and listen to them, and just start with like journaling about it and thinking about, you know, starting from now, take note and be like, man, I had that ringing in my ear. I had that goosebumps. I had that chills. I had those butterflies. I saw something out of the corner of my eye, right? Like tune into where you have that knowing and start taking note and being like, man, you start to realize how much of this is really happening to you on a day-to-day basis. It's funny because when I first started hearing about and learning about psychics, I was like, oh, that's for like weird woo-woo people who have like a storefront and like claim to like levitate like abjects and stuff. But realistically, psychics are all of us. Like we all have an ability to tap into information that is not physically available to you at this time. And if we have that ability, then we should be cultivating that ability, because the fact is life is short and it's not really long enough to learn everything and experience everything. But it's more than enough time if you are using all of the skills at your disposal, if you are using all of the experiences around you to shape the way you're living. Your life can be much bigger. Your life can have way more breadth and more, you know, more influence and impact. You know, we say all the time living like this on the road that we do more in one day than most people like do in a week. And we move fluidly like water, like we just do things so easily. And it's all intuitive based on me, from me. You know, I just get an idea, even the idea to come to Ireland. It just came up. I was like, next place we're going, this is where it is. It came to me kind of in a moment and I just spoke it. And after we made the plan to come, we found out that we didn't even know this information consciously, but that there's areas of Europe that are part of an agreement called the Shenzhen Agreement. And in that agreement, all of the countries in the EU that are in the agreement, you can't be in any of those countries for a length longer than three months. So France, Switzerland, Greece, Italy, they're all part of this agreement. So it's not like you could go to Italy for 3 months and then France for 3 months. You can only be in all of the countries involved in this agreement, which is like most of the countries in the EU, for a span of 3 months. And we didn't know that. And it turned out that Ireland is one of the countries that's not in that agreement, one of the like 7 countries or 8 countries that's not in that agreement, and that we were coming to the end of our 3 months in the territory. So we needed to go to a country that wasn't in the agreement. But we didn't know these things consciously, but I just made the move. We had a date, we knew where we were going, and it just worked out perfectly. And it was like completely seamless. And I have no explanation for these things other than intuition, honestly. So I highly recommend you try these things, use them, trust yourself, listen to yourself, especially now. We've talked about this a lot with what's happening across the world globally, what's happening with the vaccine mandates, what's happening with your health, with just the world in general. Right now, you need to be tuned into yourself. You need to be tuned into what feels right to you to be doing at any given moment. The world is definitely in a state where things can change quickly, and I believe that they will. And the safest place you can be is in your own mind, in your own heart, in your own connection, because that's where you're going to get truth. There's not truth available any other place right now, except there, in your heart, in your mind, in your intuition, in your connection to this higher power that's leading you wherever you're meant to go and to whatever is meant for you. So if you ever was a time to put these gifts online, to open these connections, now is the time. And if you could do it for yourself and for others, even better. So thank you guys so much. And yeah, I love you guys.